So the baby angel Geronimo is a symbol of innocence at the highest possible level. And baby angel Geronimo has been the witness of depravity, corruption, criminality perpetrated in the name of democracy, in the name of the United Kingdom by the state. And the state is now, within quotes, represented by least trust and crazy Kwarteng. And there is no real scrutiny except that Keir Starmer, fronting the opposition Labour Party, within quotation marks, has sacked his campaign manager and has said that the Labour Party is on election alert. And supposing there is an election, it is not possible to see that Liz Truss or the Conservatives would agree to have an election in the foreseeable future. But if there is one election, and Keir Starmer is the leader of the parliamentary party, which has more members in it than the Conservatives. Even if that happens, it is not possible to see that Starmer will make things better for society. Because we remember 1997, May 1997, when the British mainstream media hailed, emphasized the word hailed, Tony Blair after his so-called landslide quotation victory. Labour Party victory against the Conservatives, then fronted by John Major. What Blair did after that, Blair did not produce justice, fairness, equality, tolerance, whatsoever. Blair, on the record, did win 2 more elections, that is 3 elections. But all of that electoral victory was squandered by Blair, pursuing a policy of imitating, following, taking orders from George W. Bush. And the legacy of Tony Blair and George W. Bush in causing massacres, genocidal attacks on people in mainly, but not exclusively, in Iraq and Afghanistan. Both Iraq and Afghanistan the evidence, the evidence accessible of the behavior of the government Remember, the word government is within quotation marks. The government of David Cameron, government of Theresa May, the government of Boris Johnson. If we take those regimes and compare the government, so-called, that was fronted by Tony Blair. Tony Blair was in post from May 1997 until 2007 sometime, when he resigned and was replaced by Gordon Brown. Tony Blair behaved as the evil Satan that Boris Johnson later became. As predicted in the Holy Quran, Surah Al-Isra, Tony Blair was the evil Satan who deluded a number of people, while the majority of the people remained loyal to the precincts, sayings, and prescriptions of the Holy Quran, of the truth. So Tony Blair was the kind of template for the evil Boris Johnson. And Tony Blair is the only one with the tag Labour. That is, Boris Johnson actually was able to pronounce the name without falling sick. So Tony Blair was not only not Labour, but Tony Blair was very much anti the Labour. And so what happened was that when the 2010 election took place and Gordon Brown lost to Cameron, there was no evidence anywhere in the UK. There was no evidence that any of the media, any of these so-called platforms of free opinion was expressing any opinion, reservation, let alone questioning what the liar was doing. The liar was engaged in massacres of the innocent, and the massacre victims were mainly Muslims. Afghanistan and Iraq, but not confined to Afghanistan and Iraq. All the commentaries and all the so-called documentaries about the Tony Blair collusion with George W. Bush have contained absolutely zero evidence of any government coming into so-called governance in the UK, that any government had done anything to uphold the principles enshrined in the founding documentaries and statements of the Labour Party. The result was that when the Tories came in, they began to win successive elections, 2015, 2017, 2019. All these elections were won by so-called Labour voters being so the Labour Party could not be revived in terms of ideology as a frame of reference if anyone wanted to condemn what the Tories were doing, because the Labour Party had been finished by Tony Blair in action and in the denials that he practiced. Although Gordon Brown reportedly was the so-called genuine one of the two conspirators for blackmailing the residual Democrats in the socialists in the Labour Party, parliamentary party. Gordon Brown's behavior was nothing more than the behavior of a stooge of capitalism, of stooge of City of London, stooge of big business, etc., etc. So Baby Engine Geronimo witnessed all of this contemporaneously, contextually, and what we say about the lying criminality that is being sold now about Keir Starmer. We said that Keir Starmer is not fit to be aligned with the Labour Party name, and the Starmer should be prosecuted for false pretense that he has never been a Labour Party supporter according to the declarations, founding declarations of the Labour Party associated with Keir Hardie. Now, all the little left-wing kind of outlets that have been operating because of the internet being available so far, it may not remain available for very long, but it is still available and has been available for 10 years, let's say, good 10 years, good 10, 15 years. When the Labour Party was politically murdered by Keir Starmer stage by stage, it was quite clear that he would be groomed by the Conservatives, by the big business who wanted to create a different kind of face in order to continue the corruption and the criminality of the evil government. So they created the semi-religious facade. And the facade was that they included some arithmetic reasons for volunteering. So the Labour Party has been completely sabotaged as a party, political party, anything to do with the founding aims that can be retrieved from the records and connected with Care Hardy. So we had 1, 2, 3, I think 4 months of hectic campaigning broadcasting in 2018 about Crisp Street Market in Poplar. Poplar is the name of the place, but it's not the name of the council ward where the Poplar councillors in 1921 were active in so the Keir Starmer prospect is being hyped up by the Fleet Street media now that the least trust, least trusted Lee's trust is falling apart. That shows that the myth that Keir Starmer is ahead in polls, ahead of the Conservatives, is a lie, has been a lie, and will remain a lie. Keir Starmer is a career liar. And the career lying began after I rejected the opportunity available to me to get a license to practice as a barrister in 1973 from the Lincoln's Inn. I rejected that because of the heavy, comprehensive dispute I had with the liars at the Lincoln's Inn, as personified by the lying woman, Barbara Bates, who was the administrator at the Lincoln's Inn at the time. I had been active as a law rights constitutional law advocate before 1973. And this was 1973 a recommendation by number of 4 or 5 practicing licensed law trading barristers who said that with my skills and abilities, I should become carrier of a license from the Lincoln's Inn, which would give me, as they saw it, endless opportunities, etc., career prospects. My ambition never was to do a career at the expense of telling the truth. Truth telling is not negotiable, never has been. And it's because of that that the liars who have let down baby angel Geronimo are going to be exposed and will be exposed and have been exposed. And the witness baby angel Geronimo is shall shine ever higher, ever brighter. And baby angel Geronimo, both as a baby angel Geronimo, as well as a symbol, is the closest that we could describe to our hearts. Baby angel Geronimo stands there in his home on the grass in South Gloucestershire in England. And baby angel Geronimo says, here are the condemned, the cursed on earth. The cursed and the condemned on earth shall be judged on the day of judgment for what they are doing, what they are saying. Their lies and their cruelty and their denials and their conspiracies and their plots are being recorded and shall be exposed, presented as evidence on the day of judgment. Here, Satan rules, but the day of judgment will be ruled by God and the angels that obeyed God's command. No seeker of the truth on the planet, on the part of the planet called Little England, no seeker of the truth can expect hope to get support from a human being or those who look like human beings but actually agents of Satan and evil. They have no compassion, no solidarity, no idea of fairness and truth. So, baby angel Geronimo, strengthened only by God to put up with the spectacle, daily spectacle being perpetrated by the liars, Boris Johnson, George Injustice Eustace, Christine Middlemiss, and assorted other liars. Baby angel Geronimo says, God is the witness, and I am the witness as God abiding, God given blessing, blessed life. God loves me, and I know this, and God alone is the witness and protector against these evil perpetrators. So, when stage by stage Boris Johnson was caught lying about breaking the rules about COVID and doing the parties and all the other things, baby angel Geronimo knows, and witnessed all of that. How could any rational construction of a so-called democratic free society stop being sunk in embarrassment? How was it possible? Day after day, night after night, week after week, Boris Johnson was lying, running around, lying from one lie post to another lie post. And nobody in Fleet Street, nobody on the broadcasting media paused and said, how is it possible? How is it happening? How can we say that we are, within quotation marks, a leading civilized nation? Baby angel Geronimo is the innocent target of fabrication by these liars. And baby angel Geronimo is entitled to support, instant support, extensive support against these liars. And baby angel Geronimo is being promised support by so many that at the same time claim to know. They claim to know the internal workings, as they say. Well, they're not workings, but they say the internal workings of the e-bill DEFRA. And yet they stop short of telling the truth about how DEFRA lies and has been lying for years and years and years. Now, going back to Tony Blair, when he took over in the so called landslide of May 1977, he got to work to dismantle all signs and symbols of the so called welfare society. One such symbol was, of course, the word or the phrase social security. So there was the Department of Social Security. So the evil Blair, destroyed that phrase, social security, and he replaced it with work and pension. Now look at the thrust, work and pension. Now the idea of social security had been thousands of years before it became a state reality. Because social security is what can be called the universally defined basic among the most fundamental basic human rights. What is social security? Social security is at the top of being a society, being caring about those who need support. And those who need the support, not because of any fault on their part, but because of other factors. And that makes civilization and society reality. But smashing social security as the phrase in the name of the department and replacing it with work and pensions, what Tony Blair did was to destroy the ethos that had developed over many, many years. It's like the idea behind the National Health Service, as we discussed yesterday. The idea behind National Health Service could not be improved. It's absolutely fantastic. Health service at the point of need. You could not make it any more, quote, civilized and fair at the point of need, regardless of the income. So the National Health Service, the idea of the National Health Service has been under constant suffocation, suppression, distortion by the agents of Satan in Britain for more than 70 years. Now, all the evidence shows that if people were left for health care, if they were left to being judged on the basis of their income and the ability to pay, then millions of people over the last 70 years or whatever that have actually survived many illnesses and lived longer lives would have not lived, would have perished. So this idea, National Health Service, as I said before, is owned, claimed by the Labour Party. And it is also claimed by the Lib Dems, etc., etc. Whoever owns it doesn't matter. Who tells the truth about its ability to deliver is the most important partner or party in the debate. If the National Health Service is starved of funding and starved of the ideas that prompt the dedicated, caring service for the people who need care, then what the nurse, what's her name, Lucy Letby, the nurse Lucy Letby, her trial began on Tuesday, was it Monday? Tuesday's newspapers carry her pictures. Well, more or less the same picture. So Lucy Letby. Now, looking at that picture without any context and realizing that people's aesthetic tastes and brainwashing and grooming make people kind of get all emotional and emotionally kind of attached to somebody, let's say, who has a pretty face. Lucy Letby has a pretty face. Now, looking at her, looking especially at the pictures, it would be very difficult to relate that to the murderess that she is accused of being. And who did she murder? Not like Shipman. She didn't murder elderly people. She murdered, I mean, elderly people are innocent, that, whoever is murdered by Shipman was innocent. But the point is, these infants are only few, some of them are very young. And every infant who died later was found to have been killed or murdered when Lucy Letby was in the ward where the child or the infant got murdered. Anyone with any experience of the inside workings or internal kind of operations of any NHS facilities will know that the NHS personnel at all levels of care, specialist and non-specialist, auxiliary, nursing, doctor, whatever, that at every level there is clear absence of ethical, moral, kind of management, line management, based on the priority of caring for the particular individuals in the particular beds, deserving the highest standard of care. Anyone who knows about the operations will know that the reality is that the patients are not being given the highest priority. And when the patients are dependent on somebody else's care for their very lives, it is practically impossible to expect the absolutely overwhelming majority of the patients to create a movement. It is impossible. And it's a position where these people who are in contact with the patients, either as doctors or as nurses, auxiliaries, whatever, these people can take advantage of these patients' vulnerable position, and they can do things like Lucy Letby has done to these infants. They can murder them. And by the time the murders and severe damages are detected, it will, by definition, be too late for the individual victims. Now, the fact that anyone like Lucy Letby could even think of doing any harm to these babies is horrifying. So, how did that happen? One thing that must have been responsible for this was the lack of audit, lack of ongoing audit. Audit is not something I am referring to as a kind of event, procedure, bureaucracy after the event. By audit, I mean while the practice is ongoing. That means that there has to be all the time at all parts, in all parts of the NHS facilities, additional, specially dedicated observers observing every single case. That has to be the price that has to be paid for the lives that must be protected, and lives must be served and defended and helped. That is not happening. As I said in the case of the Black Lives Matter and the murders by black young men, mainly, not exclusive, but mainly, of other black males. There is no supervision, there is no observation, there is no actual audit of the behavior of the pupils at school, near school, in the neighborhoods, and there is no assessment of the attitudes and the psychology and the minds outside. There is no vigilant inquiry ongoing at all, which means that these young people who commit the crimes and violate other people to the point of murdering them, they have no understanding of the value and the worth of life. And that's what is happening in the NHS, that's what's happening in the schools. I'm going off camera for a minute. The way that the National Health Service facilities are operated are completely out of order. As I said, because they are operated on the assumption that the personnel who are employed effectively own the facilities. What is worse, that they effectively own the right to the lives of the people they are supposed to be caring for. So, preserving life, supporting life is not at the top of the priorities. And nobody is holding these people to account on a day-to-day basis, around the clock, which should be the only way that abuse of these facilities by these various staff at various levels can be brought to an end significantly, very significantly. In the case of the police, same thing is happening. The police are reported by all the papers that do report about the police failures, that the police are letting people down. In fact, even the Times, owned by Dr. Digger, but Times with the history of reputation for being the newspaper of records, etc., is reporting very high numbers of people being totally let down by the police everywhere. And there is no constitutional, legal, democratic way to hold the police to account. Going to court, as Wayne Cousins did after murdering, raping, and burning Sarah Everard, didn't do any justice to Sarah Everard at all. She has been raped, she has been abused, and she has been burnt. Nothing can match what she has been through. Nothing that Wayne Cousins ever gets will match what Sarah Everard suffered. So the aim has to be in the police to stop any such Wayne Cousins again. But Wayne Cousins will not be stopped if the evidence of the WhatsApp groups is any guide, because the police, despite the fact that Wayne Cousins was caught and tried and imprisoned, other police operated WhatsApp groups for years in which they expressed opinions that were the worst racist, sexist opinions. So society, if it's not just the weak-souled regime of Lee's trust that is broken. Society has been denied. This existence of society has been denied by Thatcher. But that was not a statement of fact. That was an ideological statement, which means that she was doing everything possible to make society disappear, to abolish society. And in the 32 years since she was ousted in 1990, society has been undermined by her successor ideologues, her successor Satans in power, in purse of power. And the example of the lack of scrutiny of the police, of the NHS personnel, of the schools personnel, especially the schools governors and the schools head teachers, apply that same principles apply to the judiciary. The judges are out of control, out of order, are following the influence of Satan and are not doing justice to the ones that deserve justice. And the same applies to members of parliament. Members of parliament in Britain follow the lines of Satan, their career. And the fact that the members of parliament in the UK are not not obliged to answer questions or even correspondence from their constituents, so called, is unbelievable, isn't it? The MPs are on a license, open, brazen license to lie and defy the very constituencies whose names they actually draw the money and stay in their careers. And the fact that Rupa Haque was exposed by a far right website, it wasn't exposed by The Guardian. Rupa Haque's comments about Kuatang being a superficial black was actually instantly broadcast, published by Guido Fox, the far right online publisher based in Ireland but operating in the UK. The United Kingdom is devoid, completely devoid of the rule of law, contrary to what Imran Khan in Pakistan keeps saying. Imran Khan says that Boris Johnson only left the office or the post of Prime Minister because, as Imran Khan wrongly claims, the lively operation in the UK of the rule of law. Boris Johnson did not do that because rule of law still is not working. All the breaches of all the rules by Johnson and others remain unapplied, unaccounted for, unasserted, let's say. Coming further down the local level, the lies that Luther Rahman perpetrated during 2010 and 2014 are lies, still lies, and they're criminal lies, and none of those lies has been put through the prosecution process that they should have done. The same applies to the lies that other executive elected mayors have been perpetrating, both in Newham and in Hackney and in Lewisham, and now in Croydon. We shall be continuing. This is the edition just under 50 minutes long. We shall be continuing in the next editions. This is coming to 2011 GMT on Tuesday, the 11th of October 2022. This has been part 2. In the next editions,